is LGBT psychology? As the title suggests, this branch of psychology concerns itself with the lives and experiences of members of the LGBTQ community. In this episode of PsyPointers, we will be discussing what LGBTQ psychology offers, its history, and how it has been applied here in the Philippines. We will also talk about what allies can do to spread awareness on LGBT psychology. Hello, my name is Kira, and welcome to the 8th episode of PsyPointers. In this series, we'll be tackling the different ways to take care of yourself and be more aware of how others may be feeling or what they may need in times of distress. Disclaimer, we are not professionals here and we're not really trying to cure anyone. So if you're suffering from any mental issues, please take some time to breathe, step away from anything, and talk with someone you're comfortable with, your friends, your family, your therapist, if you have one. And again, seek professional help as soon as you can. If you like this series and don't want to miss out on future episodes, please show us your support by liking and subscribing. Don't forget to click on the bell icon to get a notification whenever we post a new video. So here's a little background on LGBTQ psychology. So LGBT psychology is a broadly focused branch of psychology that focuses on the concept of sexuality. They would look into the lives of LGBTQ individuals along with other important events and factors such as experiences from discrimination, abuse, coming out, development of one's identity. This one would probably start from your childhood all the way up to adulthood, and of course the effects of social interactions with your family or the community around them. Now, mental health sciences have given a huge impact throughout the development of LGBTQ psychology by promoting inclusivity both in theory and practice across different fields of psychology. They also aim to inspire acceptance towards individuals who do not conform to the heteronormative and cisgender's perspective and instead allow them to express themselves freely. LGBTQ psychology is aimed to find ways to protect the LGBTQ community in order to ensure a healthy environment for their well-being. Some of the methods include, of course, spreading verified information to represent these LGBT individuals to a positive light. Now, this next point I would like to stress, one does not need to be gay, lesbian, transgender, or any sort of indicated LGBTQ identity to join along with the initiative as long as the person has a personal interest over it. Okay, time for a little history lesson. So, what is the history of LGBTQ psychology and where did it come from? So at first, psychologists overall played an impacting role on alienating the non-heterosexuals by perceiving homosexuality as a disease. However, in time, psychologists in the current years would work specifically in the psychology of sexualities to not only understand the development of sexual orientation and gender identity, but also create counter-evidence on homophobic and heterosexist claims against the LGBT community. From these methods, they hope that they could achieve a safe space that could promote positive well-being. In 1973, American Association's Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders removed homosexuality thanks to the contribution by academics and practitioners who proved that it shouldn't be described as a disorder. Instead, they should look into societal homophobia, which was one of the main causes behind the detrimental health of non-heterosexuals. One of the reasons why studies related to homosexuality was linked to mental illness and criminality, because psychologists often studied on prisoners and mental patients to learn about it further. So, here's where it gets a little bit tricky. How does LGBTQ psychology compare in other countries versus the Philippines? Okay, so before we can compare LGBTQ psychology in the Philippines to other countries, we must first ask the question of how our country addresses queer mental health in general. I think that the fact that LGBTQ psychology here is only starting to emerge is quite telling of our country's passivity, or some might even say neglect on the topic of LGBT mental health and rights. To expand on this, traditional family structures and the expectancy to comply with gender roles are very common in Filipino culture. A study by Rare Cabrera in 2017 studied how gender role strain affects the psychological health of Filipino gay men. The results of this study indicate that gender role strain in Filipino gay men correlates significantly with their depression, global anxiety, stress, and social anxiety. Gender role strain can come from society's expectations, the conservative Catholic mindset, and even from the media's lack of accurate representation of the LGBTQ plus community. Sneak peek to a new video, emoji, I don't know. Okay, so because our society fails to identify how much these things affect their mental health, it has also slowed down the country's development of LGBTQ psychology. Let us compare this to a more liberal and diverse society, I guess. Like, for example, America. The first emergence of LGBTQ psychology took the form of gay affirmative psychology in the 1970s, and it was developed by American psychologist Alan Mallion. It was developed to challenge the traditional perspective of homosexuality as a mental illness and show that homosexuals can be psychologically healthy, normal individuals. There are courses dedicated to LGBT psychology there and licensed psychologists dedicated to the field in many of these countries. This goes without saying, though, that there are still many other countries who have not really delved much into LGBTQ psychology, and unfortunately, our country is only beginning. In fact, the first anti-discrimination bill to be drafted here in the Philippines was created in 1992 by UP Babaylan. Today, however, with the current fight for the SOGI Equality Bill and other LGBT advocacies, it's quite evident that we're still struggling, especially to identify the importance of queer rights and their mental health. However, with the constantly evolving youth, there's definitely hope that our mindset will eventually learn to be more accepting and more advocative on this. You now might be asking yourself, Hira, why is this important? Like, why do I need to know this? The importance of LGBTQ psychology played a huge part in the gradual acceptance, or at least the awareness of homosexuality throughout the years, along with, of course, disproving the connection of homosexuality towards issues related to mental illnesses and criminal cases. Instead, they emphasized how hereditary and the environment became known factors in the development of homosexuality. Studying and learning LGBTQ psychology can help us get rid of discriminatory scenes. Of course, for a more educated society, will result in a more harmonious one. Like, guys, imagine a world without homophobes. It would be so peaceful. Promoting LGBTQ psychology can help in creating safe spaces within educational institutions, such as schools or research facilities. Now, this is mostly due to how these communities would be exposed to studies and discussions regarding LGBTQ people, and of course, the common encounters they encountered, such as maltreatment, hate crimes, violence, lack of safety, healthcare, and etc. LGBTQ psychology, in a way, has helped encourage LGBTQ activism, where people would initiate movements and rallies as a response towards injustices evident within certain communities. This helps specifically in making historical changes worldwide, such as, Josephine Baker, who was known as the first openly bisexual entertainer from the jazz age. So you might be asking yourselves another question. I'm straight, but I support LGBT, I vibe with them. So what can allies do to spread awareness on LGBTQ psychology? Okay, first of all, there's a difference between tolerance, acceptance, and understanding. Okay, so in this context, tolerance in the LGBTQ community is when someone says, it's okay to be gay as long as you aren't working in my company. Or it's like, it's okay to be homosexual as long as you aren't dating my child. In a sense, it could also be interpreted as you will be endured by everyone, but only to a certain extent. Tolerance means ignoring them, while acceptance is acknowledging them. Examples of this is transgenders being told off for using certain restrooms, like you're a trans man and you want to use a man's bathroom, but you're being told off. Or you're a trans woman and you want to use the female bathroom, but again, you're being cut off. There have been instances where people have been arrested over this. Healthcare, with the resources we have for HIV prevention and awareness, is pretty sparse. Of course, legal issues, and of course, gender stereotypes. So although tolerating and accepting is a great start, becoming an ally of the LGBTQ community, a higher calling is actually getting to know them and understanding them. Making the effort to understand someone allows allies to gain positive attitudes like being kind-hearted, being aware of heteronormative biases, as well as encourage curiosity, empathy, respect, and sensitivity. These simple acts allow people to make connections despite their differences. To put into perspective, tolerance gives people an excuse to remain ignorant about other people's emotional, social, and legal struggles. It allows people to lump members of the LGBTQ community as those people and put them into a separate box and treat them as others. When you understand someone, on the other hand, you learn to recognize, support, and appreciate their struggles and see each person as someone like me and see them as equals. One vital move that we can make is to create and promote safe environments for LGBTQ youth. Bullying and discrimination is a common detrimental factor to LGBTQ youth's mental health. Studies have shown that only 15% of Filipinos reside in areas protected by ordinances against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. The discrimination that they face is only worsened by discriminatory policies and practices. For example, rigid gender roles imposed by institutions and the government's refusal to pass the SOGI bill. A safe and accepting space will promote mental wellness, and more research has shown that being out as an LGBTQ adult is associated with positive social adjustment. It has beneficial psychosocial and developmental effects for youth too. With a safe environment, people will be allowed to freely express themselves without fear for their safety. Next is that you should educate yourself. Understanding and educating yourself on the people around you, in this case, your queer peers, would be a great way of showing your support. We asked some of our friends from the LGBTQ plus community on what they think allies can do to help. So one of them said unlearning stigmas and hearing different stories from the LGBTQIA plus community helps address the problems they face against discrimination. Communicating with them may help people realize what they need specifically, which is different for every member. The queer community is such a wide spectrum, and having a thorough understanding will keep us from leaning towards the stereotypes and discrimination. Next is that you should turn your words into actions. Many people have spread awareness through their words and social media posts, but awareness and advocating can go far beyond that. To truly be able to help, we should make the constant effort to take these words and turn them into action. By example, there is more change than simply identifying as an ally. We must take the necessary steps toward a world where all individuals, people, regardless of their sexual orientation and gender identity, are loved and accepted as equal. Thank you to our thank you to our friends Danny and Stephen for joining us and giving us the time to answer our questions. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Wrapping it up, I think that as a member of the LGBTQ community myself, I think that LGBT psychology should be a topic that the general public should have basic knowledge on. Having an idea about it already opens up a lot of doors for the LGBTQ community, in a sense that it can really raise awareness on how the gender spectrum works. For example, people not really knowing what LGBTQIA plus actually stands for. It's something that you'd think a lot of people would know, but there are a lot of people who don't understand the difference between bisexual, pansexuals, asexuals, panromantics. It's a really wide spectrum, and I think we should open ourselves more to understanding that. Or that, I think it was mentioned in the interview that, for example, Jake Cyrus, who initially came out as a lesbian, but later came out as a trans man. He wanted to become a trans man, and it was really such a proud moment to watch him go through that process. We should also understand that the LGBTQ community has gone through a lot, especially when it comes to violence. Like the most prominent one that I could really think of is Jennifer Laude, who was murdered in 2015 by Pemberton.
it was so brutal, and I think that's something that we should really ponder on. Like, why does it have to reach that certain extent? And yeah, we really should start to understand more why LGBTQ psychology is such an important way that it really helps our society, you know, get better. I think also understanding the difference between pronouns is also not just the difference, like the why it's so important that you get someone's pronouns right. I really That's something else that I wish more people would understand. And it's an adjustment, but like you gotta get yourself used to it. And well, that's wrapping it up, I guess. LGBTQ psychology is a very important thing, and it's a very real thing. And I hope that more people would be more open to studying this. Comment on any topic you would like us to tackle next. Make sure to like and subscribe. Remember to click the bell icon, and thanks for watching. Bye!